Hi, Tim. Thank you so much for helping my project. Could you say a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Tim Gagnon. I was born and raised in Hartford, Connecticut. Always been a fan of the space program. Very grateful that I got to witness our first explorations off the planet. And uh, I moved to Florida in 1991 because I had to get involved in the space program. You just couldn't be very involved in Connecticut. That's just the way geography works. And I eventually got a job with a NASA contractor as a shipping receiving manager. And at the end of the shuttle program, or the year before, because our contract expired, I was laid off like thousands of other people. And but the thing that people are most interested about me is that since 2004, I've worked with astronauts to help them design their mission patches.
Now, you say you've always been interested in space and space exploration, but
Oh yes, I still remember the Life magazines on the coffee table when I was 5 years old, and watching it on a little black and white TV with rabbit ears, and it was just amazing. I think part of that is, I mean, rockets are cool anyway for any kid, I would imagine. But my dad was a Nike missile crew chief in the Connecticut Army National Guard, so it was like the same thing, you know. He fired missiles because he showed us movies of when they did training in New Mexico, White Sands, and so it was like, you know, yeah, rockets. My dad's involved, so it's the same thing.
that's really neat. How old were you in 1969?
1969, I was 12 and a half.
And could you kind of describe what you saw and how you felt and what you talked about with your friends regarding the moon landing?
Well, it's funny you should ask because my best friend of 60 years, John St. Pierre, recently passed away. And one of the things we talked about recently, I went to see him in the hospital in June. And one of the things we talked about recently was walking home from school because it was during Gemini 4. And we started in September and went into June for the school year. And we were on the way home, we were discussing how much trouble Ed White was going to get in because they had to tell him to get back inside the spacecraft more than once.
Hmm.
And it was because of communication issues, not like Ed White was going to disobey a direct order. But I remember that conversation almost like it happened yesterday. And we got a laugh about that. But on the day, on July 20th, 1969, it was a Sunday, and my parents were hosting what we used to call a cookout, barbecue. And we had friends and neighbors there and some family. And I don't think it was Apollo themed because I was the only one glued to the television set, and I would run outside and give everybody an update, like their go for powered descent, and, run back inside to watch the coverage. But when we were getting ready to land, everybody came in to gather around to watch. And my family, my paternal grandmother was visiting that summer, and her and I, my parents, my younger brother, who was 9 or 8.5, were watching the moonwalk. And after Neil Armstrong stepped on the surface, my younger brother went to bed because, he had school. Well, no, he didn't have school. That was July, so he was just tired. But my grandmother and I stayed up to watch the entire moonwalk. And she remarked how she was born in 1900, and she got to witness the entire aviation history from Lindbergh. The Wright brothers, I don't think she saw anything. I mean, you didn't get TV coverage in those days, but she remembers the newspapers and things like that, remembers the radio broadcasts about Lindbergh's flight, and now she was watching men walking on the moon. and she was 69 that year. So it was a pretty neat time to be a kid. But I've been giving this some thought lately. What struck me was that I was the only one of my friends who was batshit crazy about the space program. And, kids were being kids. They were, getting involved with sports and all that kind of stuff. It didn't interest me. We're going to the moon, for God's sakes. So, but I guess it struck me when I was a little kid. I was in awe of it then. I'm still in awe of it now, even though I know a lot of the people involved. And it's just an amazing adventure.
Did you have any sense on, or did you have any expectations on what would come after that?
Well, I wrote to my U.S. Senator in 1972 to request an invitation to attend the Apollo 17 launch. I said, the program is ending and I need to see a Saturn V launch. And, everybody in my family, excuse me, I'm just going to raise you up a little bit because I feel like I'm looking down on you a little. There we go. Everybody was amazed when he said, sure, we'll get you an invitation. And then I had to write back and say, I'm 16. Can you invite my dad? Because I couldn't rent a car. I couldn't rent a hotel. I'm 16 years old, for God's sakes. No, and nobody was expecting the man was going to say, sure. And I remember it being very bittersweet. I learned afterwards that, half of the KSC workforce was laid off the day after launch, right before Christmas. And I recall thinking how stupid a decision that was, because we could have flown maybe 2 Saturn V's a year. And imagine if we had kept and upgraded that heavy lift capability. I mean, the Russians have been flying a Soyuz for almost 60 years. I mean, a Soyuz is just a upgraded version of their Voskhod vehicles. And yeah, they haven't gone to the moon, but they've upgraded. They understand that technology. It has an outstanding record. I think a couple of failures. And imagine if we had just upgraded and flown Saturn V's and where we could be now. Now, I am not dissing the shuttle program. I was involved in the shuttle program. Apollo, I watched, and the shuttle I participated in. And the shuttle was the only vehicle that could create the International Space Station. But I wish we had done both. I wish we, Saturn V on pad B maybe, and a shuttle on pad A, or vice versa. And I wish NASA had been properly funded this entire time.
And I guess, what do you think it would take in terms of public education, engagement, outreach, vision to actually make that happen?
I think Apollo is a once in a millennial event. It was a perfect storm of, oh my God, the Russians are going to beat us, and we can't let that happen. Because, I mean, people were complaining about Apollo before Apollo 11 landed. And the unfortunate thing, let me just close the window here. The unfortunate thing is that it was billed to the United States as a race, a challenge. We have to win this race. And we did. I mean, people were motivated. It was amazing that 400,000 of us worked to make it happen. But then in 1969, people said, okay, we won the race. Why are we sending Apollo 12? Why, people started caring a little bit about Apollo 13 only when the service module exploded. And I remember people complaining. I remember the discussions that such and such show wasn't on because they covered a moonwalk. For God's sakes, people, we're walking on the moon and you're worried about I Love Lucy. I mean, come on. But it was just, we are a very fickle society. I don't know why that is. I'm not a psychology major. I remember in Titusville in 1998, we had almost an extra 100,000 people in town to see John Glenn launch on Discovery. And everybody it was a party. It was a wonderful day. It was a launch day and the mission was successful. But, when the party ended, everybody just left and that was it. So our enthusiasm, our support of the space program is a mile wide and an inch deep. I mean, they love the spectacle, but they don't know or, aren't interested in learning what's behind the spectacle. Why are we doing these things? I don't have the answers to that, but I am heartened to see all of the younger professionals that are enthusiastic about the program, because I'm an old fart. I'm on Medicare, so 10, 15 years I will be remember Tim Gagnon. It's just the way life is. But I'm hoping that you young people get to witness and be in awe the way I was at the amazing adventures to come. I think going to the moon with Artemis as an international effort is the smart way to do it. The cost and the benefits should be shared. And I hope that that effort to return us to the moon is as successful as the effort to have an international space station, so that we can build upon the moon landing. And I would love to see a moon base established. I'd love to see a telescope on the far side of the moon as a installation that can be visited and maintained and so forth. Because things break, if you have that capability, that's amazing. That's the scariest thing for me about the James Webb Space Telescope. It's going to be 1 million miles away, and God forbid something breaks. That's it. And NASA will be eviscerated if that happens. I remember when they were eviscerated when the Hubble mirror had a aberration that was less thick than a human hair. And oh my God, from 1990 to 93, when they fixed it, people were vicious. But now look at it, 30 years in, and it's one of the greatest things we've ever done.
I know the next 3 months, I think, are going to be really difficult for NASA. You got the James Webb, the 29 days on the edge of deploying James Webb, and then the first SLS launch right after that. It's like if those go perfectly, people go, that's great. But if anything goes wrong with them.
We spent all this money and it cost, all this time, and it's not working. It's an expensive piece of space junk, so God forbid.
You mentioned you wish that more people understood the why of what we are doing these things. I was wondering if you could speak about what that why is to you.
Well, I remember when my father's kidneys failed and he was put on dialysis because he wasn't a good candidate for replacement surgery, transplant surgery. And, his memory of what dialysis was like was based on the 40s and 50s. Because of the space exploration, the technology to make things smaller and better trickled down to every field. A dialysis machine was smaller than a refrigerator, and he went to the doctor's office 2-3 times a week for 4 hours or so, and then he came home. Before, he would have been stuck in the hospital hooked up to this monster machine, and it wouldn't have been as efficient. So imagine, and he's been gone since 1995. Imagine how much better it is now. So space technology really does trickle down into society. Imagine a world where you don't know that a hurricane is coming, and all of a sudden this category 5 just tears into your city, and you may have had, a little bit of notice by, oh my God, those dark clouds in the sky look pretty nasty. Or maybe they sent up a weather plane. But now we have weeks notice, depending on the strength and trajectory. Imagine, talking to somebody halfway across the country on your cell phone. I mean, these are things that were incomprehensible. I remember when I was a kid, you had to wait until after a certain time because the rates were cheaper to make a long distance phone call. I mean, so there are a lot of benefits that directly trickle down into society, and then the fact that they developed the technology to make things better and smaller and cheaper, those things are made possible because of the successes in space exploration. So, for the amount of money we each spend on NASA's budget, yeah, we spend more on cigarettes and pizza, per person. So I would donate more. I would absolutely, just for the medical advances, if nothing else.
Some would kind of counter that argument with, if you wanted to create medical advances, why not directly try to create the medical advances? How does doing this seemingly unrelated activity and looking for spin-offs, how is that a better way than actually saying how?
Well, they are growing crystals and trying to develop pharmaceuticals more efficiently on the space station. The American Cancer Society has been in business for decades. And while it's a worthy effort of support, don't get me wrong about that. I'm not saying shut down the American Cancer Society. You don't hear or see any results of their research here on Earth. You just don't hear the news, whether it's just not there or it's not being reported, or the research is just not borne fruit. I don't know the reason. And I would never stop supporting them because, cancer is a scourge that really does need to be eradicated. And I look forward to the day where people aren't terrified by a cancer diagnosis. But it seems that people, when there's something like the space program and companies are involved in it, they seem to be able to work to do something to make that possible, and then say, oh, well, we can apply this to this. So I don't know why it's that way, but it has proven that it's an effective way of doing things. Spinoffs are one of the things that we benefit from in a large way immediately on Earth, and who knows what we'll find with further exploration. It just seems that the money that is spent has a return of investment, that is very impressive. Any Wall Street expert would say, if you can get a return on investment like this, then invest in this stock. It just is that way.
Now, I know of at least 2 other attempts to try to get back to the moon, or at least proposals or discussions. You had the
we've been talking about it for a long time.
You had the George H. Bush, and then the George W. Bush, and then the current Artemis program. Do you have more hopes that we're actually going to be successful this time, or do you think we're likely going to run into the
Well,
same
I'm
problems?
s- I remember 41's speech in 1989 on the 20th anniversary of Apollo 11, and it was a wonderful speech in front of the Air and Space Museum, but politics had already started getting toxic, and the Democrats were not going to support the president's proposal. It's too expensive, blah blah blah, and then his son's speech, people decried the ending of the shuttle program. And it would have been nice to continue at least 1 or 2 shuttle missions a year as well. But they had started shutting down the supply lines years before the shuttle program ended. I worked on a supply line and I got laid off in 2010, and the program ended in 2011. But nobody was saying, the public, I'm not talking about people that were directly involved. Of course, they saw, the news coming, but George W. Bush announced the end of the shuttle program because we had just lost Columbia the year before. So people understood that as an amazing vehicle as the shuttle was, it had a serious flaw. Story Musgrave said it best, that it was like a butterfly bolted to a bullet. And it was an amazing vehicle. I am absolutely thrilled and honored that I got to play a very tiny part in it. But there are better ways of doing things. And, people like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, even though everybody seems to hate their successes right now, they're reinventing spaceflight. I mean, I never thought a rocket could land back on Earth after putting up a payload. Can you imagine if we had that ability back in the 60s and a Saturn V first stage lands back at the Cape? I mean, it would have been amazing. But, people, build on what we've done and they make things better. We've done that with the airline industry. 100 years ago, only rich people flew in airplanes. So yeah, millionaires are flying into space right now. I'm okay with that because my grandsons have a better shot at going into space than I ever did. So that's just the way society works. The people that can afford it do it because it's new, it's cool, and everything else. And then eventually the costs come down and everyday people can do it too.
And it's also amazing. I mean, those two individuals, they weren't born wealthy, and
No,
they actually had to create real companies producing real products
yeah,
to get their
exactly.
wealth. So
Exactly. I don't begrudge the success of people like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. Why don't we want everybody to be as successful? I think, we have free education up to grade 12. You can graduate high school and your parents pay some taxes into their town and you get to go to school. I think we should have free education to grade 16. You should get your bachelor's in college for free. Maybe you have to do a year of service, like, the Peace Corps or the military, because the military gets to go, to college on the GI Bill or some variant of that. And they deserve to do that because they donated a portion of their life to serve the country. But why aren't we trying to make that system work for everybody? Imagine some poor kid living in a city who might know how to cure cancer if he could only go to the right school and work with the right facilities and have access to things that could make his idea a reality. I mean, we are eating our seed corn, and everybody's, all the division politically between the right and the left is, well, what's that going to cost and who's going to pay for that? Well, if we build a better, stronger society, who cares who pays for it? Everybody should, the problem I have with the left is they're not pushing the argument of a flat tax. Sure, Bezos and Musk probably pay less in income taxes than I do because they've got amazing lawyers and accountants, and they know how to work their bookkeeping so that it's not the same as what's available to me. So have a specified flat tax, whatever the percentage turns out to be, where people understand fairness. And what people are railing about right now is that there seems to be a lot of elitism, where the rich have access to things that the poor will never have access to. In this country, people should never go hungry, and people should never be sitting out on the street because they have no place to live. We can solve those two problems at the very least. And sure, they make donations to charities, but those two problems deserve to be solved as well. I mean, it's just common human decency. But we should have a system in this country, educational and otherwise, where everybody gets to have that opportunity up until age 24 or 22, whatever it is, to graduate college for free. And then if you go to grad school, sure, the Ivy League can charge you $20,000 a year or whatever the hell it is now. And I mean, my daughter went to college, but she earned scholarships, and we were lucky she did.
There's also another thought that maybe we need to do more with the 12 years they currently have, providing like options for trade school and
absolutely yes. Absolutely yes. My son-in-law never went to college, but he is one of the smartest people I know. He is an expert, just about self-taught, by the way, in almost every trade. He will call in some friends' help, on things like electrical and kinds of things that can kill you. But he can build anything. He can work on his car. I mean, and that type of talent needs to be captured in grade school. And if a person like that doesn't want to get their bachelor's at a college, let him get a 4-year education at a trade school and become a craftsman in a field of their choosing, because we need those people too. You get these Ivy League Wall Street guys who may know how to manage money like Einstein is smart, but when their toilet backs up, they can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
So absolutely, I agree with you. Absolutely, trade schools should be a encouraged option for people that don't want to go to college.
And to your point, I really think those Wall Street people should know basic plumbing.
They really should. They really should.
I know. Do you have more time?
Sure.
Oh, okay. So the 2020s have been amazing so far in terms of space exploration. I mean, we have SpaceX and their reusable first stage. You have Rocket Labs, who's it came from New Zealand, which I think is amazing that we have a country. I mean, my thought is if New Zealand can produce a orbital private rocket company, then what keeps any country in the world from doing something similar?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And we have several companies getting ready to land probes on the moon. Intuitive Machines here in Houston, Astrobotics in Pittsburgh.
Yep.
I think Firefly over near Austin. So lots of places. And really feels like there's like this energy and kind of enthusiasm for space that we haven't seen in a long time. And I was thinking that the 2020s might be what the people living in the 1960s expected from the 1970s, which is kind of hard to follow. But I was
No,
wondering.
I see exactly what you mean. Yeah, I mean, I grew up I was born in the 50s, grew up in the 60s, and I watched the Jetsons, and I figured by now I would have a flying car. I mean, it was supposed to be that way, and why isn't it? I don't know, but yeah, I fully agree. I love the excitement. The young people of today that are involved in all these efforts give me a lot of hope, because every generation has expectations. We thought the world would be different when I was 18 years old, and we were going to make change happen. And it doesn't always happen the way you expected or the way you hoped, but it does eventually happen. And I'm wishing this generation well. I will happily applaud their success from a wheelchair in a nursing home if possible. I think it's going to be amazing.
You look really healthy, and medical technology is advancing.
Well, my family DNA is not known for its longevity, so I appreciate every day, and I try to make the most of it. But I don't ever think I'm going to celebrate my 100th birthday. Not here, anyway.
I hope you're wrong about that, but
yeah, I would like to be wrong. I always wanted to live to be 100. I always thought that was pretty cool.
I was messaging a friend, and he's like, "Oh, you're gonna live to 100." I was just about to message you. I'm like, "Just 100?"
Well, if I can see 80, I did some research. No male members of my family going back generations ever saw 80 years old. So I'm not a doctor, so I can't draw a causational line like why, but and I had a heart attack in 2013, so and I coded on the table, so I know what it's like to just turn off.
Wow.
So the day after that heart attack, I should have never seen it. I was very, very lucky. So, and every day since then, I've been very, very lucky. So I've learned to appreciate now.
Well, I just thinking a little bit about the future. What do you think about us going back to the moon? I mean, what excites you most about us taking those next steps?
Well, Apollo, as awesome and glorious as it was a flag and footprints thing. NASA tried to wring all the science it possibly could out of it, and they did a fair job for the time and the resources we had and what we knew then. But this effort is about establishing a base, something like the science bases in Antarctica, where you have rotating people going in and back and forth and serving for 3-6 months or whatever. And what I'm most excited about Artemis is that we are going to test what's necessary, the infrastructure, what's necessary to take us to Mars. And if we were to launch a crew to Mars right now, it would be just like another Apollo flags and footprints kind of a thing. We don't know enough about mitigating the effects of radiation and microgravity on a flight that takes months. We're learning, we've had people on board the International Space Station for 6 months at a time, and a couple of people have almost done it for a year. And the third person, I think, is going to actually be on board for a year. But so we are making steps in the right direction, but we're not ready to go to Mars yet. Hopefully we'll be ready for our first initial flight in 10 years or so. But I see it more realistically as between 15 and 20 years. But if we can get back onto the moon and practice, establishing a facility to live and work in, for in situ resourcing, and excuse me, learning how to live off the land, then we'll be that much more prepared when we do fly to Mars.
No,
So very excited about going back to the moon.
that absolutely makes sense. I was wondering what you thought about Elon Musk's talk about building a 1 million person city on Mars by 2050.
2050, not going to happen. And I caution people about betting against Elon Musk. Trust me, the man is amazing in his ability to talk about something and then create it. So if anybody can do it, he probably can. But people had damn well better be ready for the first funeral on Mars, because there's going to be some dead explorers. That's the nature of exploration. How many people, when they came to North American continent, never went home?
They just didn't have Instagram and YouTube accounts and Twitter feeds where you got a front row seat into that.
And will the public, who is almost like a kitten with a shiny new thing, they get distracted easily, what are they going to do when that happens? Elon Musk might become the most vilified man in the world overnight. So and he knows this, I'm not telling Elon Musk anything, that we need to make that effort as prepared as possible. Back in 2003, when the Space Mirror Monument at KSC was rededicated for the Columbia crew, John Clark, who's lost his wife on Columbia, said, we have to decide as a country, are we a space-faring or a space-fearing country? Because these will not be the last names on this monument. And that's true. I mean, space, as wonderful as it is to see Michael Strahan and William Shatner and all these people getting a glimpse of suborbital flight, and I'm just as happy for them as well, because it's an incredible accomplishment. Space will kill you in a second. And the next time, they launch somebody famous and things don't go well, and that person doesn't come back alive, the public will turn on this in a heartbeat. So I don't quite think the general public is ready or still understands how dangerous things are, because Columbia was 18 years ago now, and Challenger is what, 36 years ago in January. So they have very short memories. And Apollo, well, that was 1967. So none of the people alive today, understand what that was like. And technology will put your hubris in check very easily. When you start to think that you know everything, it becomes more dangerous to do it, because you don't know everything. There might still be things that you don't know. And so, if all steps are taken and the public understands the danger of it, then they may survive these kinds of events. Because the last explorer to die in space hasn't happened yet.
That comment about what you don't know, reminded me of a Mark Twain quote that I thought might be appropriate. It says, it's not what you don't know that gets you in trouble. It's what you're sure of that ain't so that gets you in
That's
trouble.
true words. Very true words. Yeah, hubris will kill you.
Absolutely. Well, if you had an opportunity to take a trip to space, would you?
Sure.
And how far would
Absolutely.
you consider going? Suborbital,
I would
orbital,
not
moon?
go past the moon. I would, if all things were even, I have no interest in going to Mars. It was always abstract when I was a kid, Flash Gordon and Buck Rogers and all that kind of stuff, H.G. Wells. But I got to see astronauts go to the moon in the 60s. So if I could go someplace, I would love a couple-week trip to the moon and see that for myself. Because then I know I'm home in a couple of weeks, I'm very much inspired by but terrified of exploration. So I will not be leading the next glorious mission, but if I could go, absolutely.
Now, I kind of see the target audience for these videos as people not even born yet. I kind of
Yeah.
people who've grown up on future worlds, maybe a colony on Mars. You're a great grandchildren, as an example.
Very
Um,
possible.
So can you imagine your great grandchild looking back at this video, trying to make sense of kind of these times that we live in and the choices we were trying to make? Is there like any perspective or anything that you think would be worthwhile capturing and sharing?
Well, I was inspired to be involved in the space program when I saw Apollo 17 launch in 1972. And I learned that the artist who painted that patch didn't work for NASA. They just created amazing art and the astronauts asked them to do it. So I said to myself, I can do that. I couldn't do it yet, but that's the way I could participate. And I started writing to astronauts in 1973. And the first patch I designed for a space flight was flew in 2005. I designed it in 2004, but you have to design these things in advance. So my success took 31 years. And it's largely due to the obstacles I put in my own way. But I would say to my descendants or anybody else listening to this, 100 years from now or whenever, if you believe in something, if you want to do something, don't give up. You're going to overcome obstacles. You're going to have to overcome obstacles to be successful. And people are going to tell you you're crazy and that you'll never do it. But if you want to do it, don't give up.
I think those are wise words for any age.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate your time. I know we talked about a lot of things, but is there anything that you wanted to add?
No, I think your conversation pretty much covered everything. I mean, I'm flattered to be invited to participate, and I think it's a pretty ambitious project you've put up for yourself. But I don't doubt you're going to succeed.
I appreciate that. Only 3 more years to go.
There you go.
Okay, well, take care, Tim.
All right, sir. You take care. Glad to do it.
Bye-bye.
Be well.
Thank you.